Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcast. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
You're listening to Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Thursday, February 28th, 2019, last day of the month. So if you're trying to take advantage of the Extendivite Heart Drop sale, this is the last day. You've got to order today. Anyway, we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, ready to answer the phones, put you on the air with your comments and questions. So let's get right on into it. Looking over at India and Pakistan, both countries are massing troops and weapons at the borders. Planes, as you know, have been shot down. There have been airstrikes. For all intents and purposes, they are at war. And India is the second largest country in the world by population. Pakistan is the fifth largest, and they both possess nuclear arsenals. If this conflict escalates, things could get bad very, very quickly. And I'll be honest, last night I was having nightmares about this. I didn't get as much sleep as I'd like. I kept waking up that Pakistan and India were nuking each other, and then I started thinking, what would be the ramifications if that were to actually happen? Well, it could go one of two ways. If nukes were exchanged between Pakistan and India, it might wake the rest of the world up that all this warmongering isn't just an abstraction, that we're really, playing with nuclear fire, and it might cause everybody to back off and say, whoa, let's rethink this. Of course, the other way it could go is countries could say, well, as long as India and Pakistan have broken the no first use, we might as well go ahead and haul on off. And I remember Paul Craig Roberts were saying there were actually people in Washington, D.C. talking about just going ahead and, launching a massive nuclear strike against Russia and just, get it over with once and for all here. So it's a very, very dangerous situation. And basically, both sides are trigger happy, and that's the danger. It's going to be very hard for the adults in the room, if there are any, to try and calm things down. And I was looking at broadcasts from both the Pakistani government and the Indian government, and the war rhetoric is just right on up there. And this is rooted in religion, Muslims against Hindus, and this goes back centuries of friction and hate, which is why after Gandhi got the British to leave India, they broke India into two parts, one of which became Pakistan, and then Pakistan itself broke into two parts, and one of that became Bangladesh. So everybody is concerned about how there is a real possibility this could escalate. And Najum Uddin, former director of the Human Rights Commission of Pakistan and a human rights activist, was being interviewed by Sputnik News and basically said the current standoff is most unfortunate. Both countries have much more pressing issues to attend to than rattling their sabers and advocating restraint alternatively. That use of military assets will only escalate things and push the other side to respond much more obvious than before. So, unfortunately, it means somebody or both sides have to back down as gracefully as they can. Now, a little bit of good news. Pakistan tomorrow is going to return the captured Indian pilot to India as a goodwill gesture. And maybe that's the beginning of this thing cooling down before it really gets out of hand. That would be a good thing here. Meanwhile, U.S. Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan is urging India and Pakistan to avoid further military actions. Well, like it's the U.S. is in charge? Can you see the arrogance in that? I mean, we all agree we would like to see Pakistan and India cool things down. But for the defense secretary to come on out there and say, yes, we think you should cool it down, I don't think that's necessarily going to go over very well. I think it's going to sort of add to that image of the U.S. as global bully. And it certainly lacks the statesmanship of a Vladimir Putin. So, but apparently Shanahan has discussed the India-Pakistan issue with Mike Pompeo, John Bolton, Joseph Dunford, and General Joseph Votel, along with Pacific Command Commander Admiral Philip Davidson. So they're out there talking about it. Well, obviously they need to keep an eye on the situation. If it does escalate, especially if it goes nuclear, there are going to be problems. There are going to be problems all over. And it's a bad day to beat Donald Trump because apparently that second Korean summit has pretty much fallen apart. They didn't reach any agreements. Apparently, they just cut off the summit early. They've canceled the planned signing ceremony, and everybody's heading off back home. Kim Jong-un is on his train back to North Korea, and I imagine that Trump will be on Air Force One heading home very soon. So Trump did a press conference saying we had to walk away. And he said the talks were cut short. Basically, they wanted the sanctions lifted in their entirety. We couldn't do that. We had to walk away from it. And Trump added he wants to denuclearize, but wants to just do areas that are less important than the areas that we want. We know every inch of that country, and we have to get what we have to get. So it basically fell apart. And further embarrassing Donald Trump, the North Korean Foreign Ministry held their press conference blaming President Trump by saying he was asking for way too much. And the foreign minister of North Korea said that North Korea asked for partial sanctions relief, primarily in the areas harming North Korean citizens and affecting their livelihoods. And in return, Pyongyang offered to permanently close its plutonium and uranium facilities in the Yongbyon region in the presence of U.S. inspectors. And he said North Korea asked the U.S. to lift sanctions corresponding with 5 United Nations resolutions adopted between 2016 and 2017. So Trump came back and said North Korea is not ready to meet the United States conditions, and that's when it all fell apart. And Trump may feel like he's being tough with North Korea, but I think people are going to look at this as a failure. Now, one good thing that did come out of it is apparently while they were over there, Boeing signed a $15.7 billion Vietnam orders with Vietnam's Bamboo Airways and Vietjet Aviation. They're going to buy 110 aircraft. So that was a little bit of good news there. Okay, we're going to do a shout out to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And getting on back here to the news. Once again, the U.S. Navy is sailing warships through the Straits of Taiwan, and apparently they're stepping up the frequency of these sailings despite opposition from China. And China, of course, expressed anger at the move. Foreign Ministry spokesman Liu Kang said, "We resolutely oppose the United States taking provocative actions which are not conducive to peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait." And again, one has to wonder what's going on where at the same time we're trying to talk China into a new trade deal that we just poke them in the eye by sailing these Navy ships through the Taiwan Strait and through the South China Sea. Now, over at the United Nations Security Council, we've had a case of dueling resolutions. Both Russia and the United States tabled resolutions regarding Venezuela. The U.S. resolution called for new Venezuelan elections immediately, and for U.S. aid, specifically U.S. aid, to be allowed into Venezuela to be handled by the opposition. In other words, shipping in the guns and the bombs and the bullets and so forth. Russia and China both vetoed that resolution. Russia put forward a resolution basically saying, let's get everybody to sit down and talk and avoid conflict. That one was voted down as well. So the situation remains fluid, as they say. Over in Israel, the Israeli Attorney General has indicted Benjamin Netanyahu on charges of bribery, fraud, and breach of trust. And this is over the Bezek Wallah affair. And the indictment was finally handed down. Netanyahu and his wife have become embroiled in multiple scandals over the past few years, all of which have yielded recommendations of prosecution. This is the first time it looks like it's actually going to happen. But the issue in the case is that Netanyahu and his wife accepted bribes from Shaul Elovitch, the owner of Israel's largest telecom firm, Bezek. Elovitch also owns the Walla News website. The prime minister crossed the line when he allegedly fired Communications Ministry Director General Davy Berger and hired ex-Netanyahu campaign manager Shlomo Filber in a bid to help guarantee special treatment for Elovitch and his companies. In exchange, Netanyahu and his wife purportedly struck a deal with Elovitch for favorable coverage on his news website. Now, it sounds kind of minor, but it is against Israeli law, and it's going to light a fire under Netanyahu to really try and win this upcoming election, to see if he can avoid the consequences for the prosecution. So now there is word that Netanyahu might schedule the demolition of the Palestinian village of Khan al-Ahmar right before the general election in April for political gain, because killing Palestinians is good politics in Israel. And the prime minister said that destroying the village would certainly help his chances of winning, according to the Times of Israel. So that's what they're getting ready to do. Now, as you know, the United Nations issued a report saying that Israel's shooting and killing of unarmed, unthreatening protesters along the Gaza border represented war crimes and crimes against humanity. And Israel has basically come on out saying that this is just theater of the absurd. And they reject the UN report. How silly of you to criticize us. You know, those protesters, they had wooden sticks. We could have gotten splinters from those. Could have gotten infected. And possibly because of what the United Nations has done, or possibly because Netanyahu's just angry at being indicted, Israeli warplanes have once again uncorked on the Gaza Strip. They struck multiple targets in the southern Gaza Strip in their latest air raids against the enclave. There were no immediate reports of casualties. The strikes were carried out last night. But apparently, several posts belonging to the Hamas resistance forces in the south of the coastal enclave were hit, including one in the Khan Yunis seafront and another outside the city. Some of the sites hit are believed to belong to Izz ad-Din al-Qassam brigades, which is the military wing of Hamas. Here in the United States, in a unanimous decision, this happened on Tuesday, a D.C. court is allowing Palestinian plaintiffs to sue Sheldon Adelson and others for $1 billion over their support of Israeli settlements and alleged war crimes, including genocide. And I hope that moves forward here. Over in Westminster, Israel's nation-state law is being condemned as racist. And this was happened at a seminar held in the Palace of Westminster yesterday by Europal Forum, whose chairman Zehra Birawi described the legislation as racist. Now, this was ratified by the Knesset in July of last year. And yes, it absolutely is racist when you have a law saying that this particular group of people have a special status above everybody else. That is racism, plain and simple. It's apartheid. So this basic law, Israel as the nation state of the Jewish people, has been criticized widely, described by Palestinians and members of the international community alike as both discriminatory and verging on apartheid. And like that caller said yesterday, it could be said that this basic law makes Israel a religious institution, which means First Amendment, the United States government may not pass any laws granting respect to an establishment of religion. Okay, we have a caller waiting on the line. Tony in Puerto Rico. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Mike. I have a quick comment. So who do you think is going to end up with Venezuela? Russia, China, United States, or Maduro?
I think the United States is going to try to do to Venezuela what they tried and failed to do in Syria, smuggle weapons in, get some opposition groups and try and take out Maduro and claim that it's a genuine grassroots organic revolution.
Okay, thank you, Mike.
All right, thank you. I mean, I'm certainly hoping that the U.S. isn't dumb enough to try and just physically invade Colombia. It'll turn into a new Vietnam. We'll be in there for years, and a lot of people are going to die, and we're going to wind up losing like we did in Vietnam here. Getting on back to Israel, everyone's always looking at that separation wall, and it turns out it's not as sturdy as you might think, because apparently several sections of Israel's annexation wall near Shufat refugee camp near Jerusalem fell over due to heavy rain. And the wall has isolated the Palestinians from their confiscated lands and separated them from the segregated Pisgat Ziv illegal settlement. So I'm sure Israel's going to put that wall back up again. But a little bit of a surprise. Anyway, here's a bizarre story. This is coming out of Sputnik News. The United States fails to make Assad trade ties with Iran for Washington support. Now, this is coming on the heels yesterday where Syria is going to Iran for help with the reconstruction of Syria. And Washington, D.C. is saying, well, why are you doing that? I mean, just because we've been bombing your country and trying to get you kicked out of power for 8 years is no reason to not do business with us. And, I mean, talk about arrogance. The fact that the U.S. even tried, and they shouldn't be surprised that they failed. Yeah, when you make war on a country, when you try and forcibly remove its leadership, don't expect them to want to make, deals with you afterwards. I mean, look how long it took before Vietnam and the United States made nice again. Okay. Apparently, the U.S., again, is on the brink of recognizing Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. It may be another reason why Syria wants to do business with Iran and not the United States. So there is a bill introduced in the Senate with a companion bill in the House that would result in the United States government recognizing Israel's sovereignty over Syria's Golan Heights, which has been occupied by Israel since 1967. Israel formally annexed the territory in 1981, but the international community, including the United States, has not recognized Israel's claim to the Syrian territory. In addition, this bill would also promote the U.S. conducting joint research projects or joint projects with Israel and the Golan, including industrial research and development. In other words, the U.S. wants to dip into their share of the oil and gas. So, no doubt Trump will sign it. It would be the second blow against the Middle East after moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem here. Over in Syria, some 40,000 civilians have been allowed to leave the last bastion of ISIS. This is according to the Syrian Democratic Forces. And the figure comprises people coming from Hajin, which is on the Euphrates rivers, that the U.S.-backed Syrian Democratic Forces captured in December, and adjacent Baghouz, which have been completely surrounded now. And the Syrian Democratic Forces are saying they are a week away from declaring victory over the Islamic State. So, time to cut off the money and the weapons and get the heck out of there. A lot of countries are still looking at this very bizarre story where these reports continue to come on out that the United States aided the leadership of ISIS to escape in exchange for tons of gold. We got to take a break for commercials. We'll be right back.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
Well, they're stealing down on Wall Street and in Washington, too. You know, it makes me wonder, what's a guy on Main Street to do? I've always tried to be an honest, upstanding kind of guy. But I must admit lately, I thought about giving something else a try. Oh, I want to be a pirate. I want to sail the seven seas, yeah, I want to be a pirate.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And if you would like to help Republic Broadcasting, and they do need it, the postal address to send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can send a check, where you can make a credit or debit card donation or pledge to be a recurring subscriber. Sorry about that, trying to do too many things. 800-724-2719. Extension 1 during business hours, extension 3 at all other times, and the network does thank you, and I thank you, and obviously donations are welcome and needed at whatreallyhappened.com as well. It's a little tight this month, is really what's going on here. Okay, so we're talking about this story. Over the last several months, we've been hearing all these stories about how U.S. helicopters are seen saving the ISIS leadership. Every time the Syrian army will have them surrounded, the U.S. forces will open up an escape corridor, or they'll fly them with the helicopters. And now we're finding out that basically this was a cash on the barrelhead deal, where apparently, this is being reported by the Syrian Arab News Agency, ISIS, as they swept across Syria, were stealing gold from the banks, from people, from whatever, and apparently they traded that to the United States in exchange for their rides out of danger. And eyewitnesses report that U.S. helicopters were transporting large boxes of ISIS spoils from out of the area in northeastern Syria. And it's estimated by SANA, it's around 50 tons of gold. That's a lot of gold. All righty. Once again, Russia and Syria are reiterating that the United States needs to leave Syria. They've issued a joint statement to U.S. forces to leave Syria and to allow people inside a refugee camp in the southeast of the country to be evacuated by Russian and Syrian forces. And Russia, or Syria rather, saying they've already got the buses to relocate the refugees in the Rubkin area and would guarantee them safe passage so that they could start new lives. And the United States really doesn't have a reason to stay in Syria anymore. Certainly not a legal one. All right, another phone call. Peter in California. Aloha, Peter. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, you're just talking about the gold from ISIS. And,
yes.
We don't know what happened to the gold in Syria. We don't know what happened to a whole lot of gold, frankly. Gold even in Venezuela, right? But I just want to say it's amazing to me when you have a foreign policy and a government that's totally dominated by a bunch of neocon guys, that you have how cheaply you can look how cheap it was to buy Jerusalem and now the Golan Heights. Now it's nice that they can get a little oil out of it, and I know Rothschild and Dick Cheney and other people are in on this Golan Heights energy business.
Well, apparently there's more than just a little oil and gas down there, and that's why it's been a point of contention for so long.
Yeah, yes, that's what I understand, and then but they're all getting rich on this, and it's amazing how, by the way, Nikki Haley was just put in on the board of directors for Boeing. And
she's been nominated. They have the board hasn't confirmed her yet. They probably will, but yeah.
Yeah, it's a kleptocracy, and it's run by a bunch of guys famous for wanting to make a buck. And our foreign policy is for sale, and it's go into Libya, take their gold. Try to go into Iraq, try to take the oil. We failed. But, it was worth a try. Wasn't their kids dying. Go into the Golan and grab their stuff. Go anywhere. There's money in it. They'll do it, and they can get us to do it. Mm-hmm. And that's what's going on. Like, that's really what's going on. And they can buy Jerusalem. You can buy the Golan Heights just for a little couple campaign contributions, and a guy like Jared Kushner whispering in Trump's ear, and there it is. It's really Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is. Turning on back to Venezuela, you need to understand that the economic warfare against Venezuela really cranked up when they repatriated their gold from, I think it was Bank of England is where most of it was being stored. And so the economic war has cranked up, and now to the point where Venezuela is now having to sell that gold again and trade it for ink and paper to try and keep the country going. So yeah, it's all about grabbing things like gold and oil, and it's all about the empire, and it's just driving the world crazy. Anyway, Peter, do you have more? Do you want to stay through the commercial break?
One more I do, yes.
Stay on the line, and we'll be right back after these few words from our sponsors.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for counterclaims in favor of the homeowner. If your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective, and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Peter in California. And Peter, you said you had one more thing you wanted to share with us.
Yeah, it's related here, Mike. And you know, I owe this to you, really. And that is you awakening my curiosity years back in the Federal Reserve. But an institution like that, which if you look who dominates it and all that, and when you can create money out of nothing, and as even the Rothschild quote goes, you give me control of the money supply and everything else, nothing else really matters.
Yeah.
But when you know one digit put onto a computer or a 5-second print run can give you enough money to buy off any politician in the world or get anybody hired or whatever, or elected. And then you look and see what all this pursuit of all this gold, everything else that they're doing, and it's all related. And you can't even suggest, by the way, it's getting to the point now that influence has been so pervasive that to suggest that the people who are running it are the people who are running it is enough to get you thrown in jail in South Carolina or in soon to be other states. You know, you can't even suggest it. That you look at Lloyd Blankfein and Jamie Dimon and all these people, and that they aren't who they are, and you're being it's quote an anti-Semitic trope. You can't even talk about the dominance. And as Gilad Atzmon says, the power of Jewish power is that you can't talk about Jewish power even. It's so powerful.
Yes.
But at any rate, that's it for me, Mike. That's, you know.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the phone call, and we're going to let you go. Getting on back to the international news here, Mike Pompeo is now out there demanding, not just asking, he is demanding that Russia return Crimea to the U.S. coup-installed government of Ukraine. You know, how dare you accept Crimea's request to join with the Russian republics? And so they're still pounding on that dead horse here. And we're basically looking at the 5th anniversary of the reunification of Crimea with Russia. And the United States still does not consider this to be legal. And it's rather arbitrary because you have the United States is out there talking about other countries annexing big chunks of other people's countries, like Israel annexing the Golan. And apparently that's permissible. But when Crimea wants to go on over to Russia, that is not. It's very arbitrary. And I think anybody who's following these events understands it really is kind of an ad hoc foreign policy. There's no consistency to it. It's whatever's going to deliver the maximum profitability at this particular point. Okay, we have another caller on the line, John in Arizona. Aloha, John. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, not much, Mike, but I'm actually, to talk about Peter's point on the last call, I'm working on a secret project with an elected official, and I think that I'm going to be able to make, with her help, I'm going to be able to make the banks public again and have a peaceful Soviet-style revolution. But I was wondering, I was at McDonald's today ordering food, and they had it all at their computer screen where you order instead of an actual cashier.
Yes.
And you've talked about it before with taxing robots. How much could you actually tax a robot for something like that? Do you have any idea?
I imagine that they could tax a robot as much as they thought as they could get away with. They could, in fact, tax robots to the point where it's more economical for business to go back to human labor, which I think would be a really good idea.
Okay. And would there be anything unethical about taxing the robots to a point where we didn't have to work or as much? Or
you know, I've heard all these ideas about this utopian society where machines do all the work and people just lie around and consume. And it sounds wonderful, sounds very Disney-esque, But the reality is, we've heard so many of our leaders use the term useless eaters. George Herbert Walker Bush used to use that one all the time. If we're not a functioning part of the economy, then if we're not serving some purpose other than casting votes for the incumbent party, they're going to find some way to not have us around much longer. And again, with this whole Agenda 30, they're talking about reducing the world's population down to below 1 billion. And that's a very drastic reduction. So I guess they're getting ready.
Wouldn't it be better to be a useless eater, though, than to be somebody who makes chemotherapy or vaccines or fluoridates the water? I mean, wouldn't it be better just to be a useful eater than somebody like that?
Well, obviously I would prefer to be doing a job that isn't causing harm to people, which is why I do talk radio instead of the other stuff.
Job.
I mean, there are things that I refuse doing during my life. Years ago, when I was working in TV commercials, I was asked to do a series of commercials that were a thinly disguised attempt to get around the ban on tobacco advertising in the United States, and I said, no, I'm not comfortable with that. So.
Good for you, Mike. Well, you take care, and thanks for your information.
All right, thanks an awful lot, and we're going to switch over to Chris in Idaho. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great.
Oh, that's great. That's great. How's everything?
It's fine. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. That is a nice blade you got up there behind you on the wall, I gotta say.
Well, thank you. Actually, it's just a decoration. It's just a decoration. Anyway, what is it you want to talk about?
Just a decoration, but I bet you sharpen that damn thing up, you could slice a thing or two.
No, actually, could. I mean, I have a real one of those in terms of weapons grade, but that's down in the living room. This one, the handle's just screwed on. You couldn't swing it; it would come apart. Trust me on this.
You got a real one?
I have a real combat-worthy version of that sword.
Oh boy, my pants just got shorter. I love the sounds of that.
Well,
any chance we could see that on the stream?
No, not really, because that's not what the show's about. I mean, I'm a guy. I like pointy, sticky things, and I like to collect knives and swords. And I was on my college fencing team,
do.
And I've actually choreographed sword fights for stage productions. So, I've swashed my buckles with the best of them, but the last time I wagged my scally in public, I got arrested.
Oh, you pulled your dick out?
No. Okay, that's the implication. It was just meant to be humor. Anyway, what is it you want to talk about?
I want to see that sword that you got down in your basement.
Okay, well, you told our screener you wanted to talk about Cohen.
He ain't no sword boy. We're a couple sword boys. Once I get past him, then we can talk turkey. You know what I'm saying?
Okay, well, listen, I'll tell you what. Thank you for the phone call. I got to let you go because I need to get back to the news, and we are going to be talking about Michael Cohen a little bit further down the show. So thank you very much here. Okay, now, over in Iran, the Ayatollah Khamenei is saying that Iran and Armenia must boost their ties. They are, after all, very close together already. And apparently the U.S. has been trying to sort of keep them divided. And the Ayatollah made a point of mentioning this, saying it's time to basically get the U.S. out of the way and just work on creating friendship and cooperation. And the Ayatollah is making a very valid point that much of the U.S. foreign policy consists of splitting up other nations, of trying to make them enemies and then inserting itself between them. Over in Iran, the Islamic Revolution Guards Corps has released footage of a U.S. military aircraft bombing a hacked drone out of fear that it might end up in the hands of Iranian armed forces. And IRGC officials say they obtained the footage after hacking into the U.S. drone command and control networks. And if you look at the actual video, it's video from the U.S. drones. There's, first of all, the drone itself. There's a video while it's landing in the desert. And then there's a second drone, which is basically observing the strike by a U.S. warplane. So Iran has made great strides on being able to get into the electronic systems of those drones here. And apparently, Iran has the world's largest collection of captured foreign drones. Okay, we're going to take another phone call. Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, before I talk about Trump first, that guy called in before and wanted to see the sword. And remember, he started screaming into the phone. I think he was just calling in to interrupt the show.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you. And either that or he was like seriously stoned.
Then remember somebody else called later talking about like the Jews did this, the Jews did that. Remember that guy? It was on the same show.
Yeah.
Be prepared for some other agent provocateur to call in. You know, maybe today's the day. You know. Hey, Mike, with
yeah, before we go
Trump,
with that, but hang on a second here, because I'm looking at an email. Somebody just came on in and said, callers should be discouraged from imbibing in alcohol prior to calling you. Yes, please. Sober callers only. Absolutely. Okay, Dustin, back to you.
Yeah, with Trump, with the whole North Korea thing, you know, North Korea, I'm glad it failed because North Korea had to know, like, what's going on with Iraq and Libya and Venezuela. You don't want to get rid of any of your nukes at this point. You know, I mean, come on. I mean, they're not stupid in North Korea, okay? You know? So,
no,
like,
they're not. They're really not. And it sounded to me like what the North Korean offer was they already have a small nuclear arsenal, and they figure that's enough. And they're willing to basically shut down the processing plants because they're not planning on building any nuclear weapons. And that was the offer they put on the table. And of course, what came back from the U.S. side is, well, you got to get rid of your bombs as well. And Trump had to know that was going to be a non-starter, especially after the very obvious heavy-handed way the United States is trying to insert itself into Venezuela. North Korea is looking at that and saying, you know, we'd be insane to not have weapons of deterrence to keep that from happening to us.
And Mike, if they got rid of all their stuff and had monitors, the United States could just, once they get rid of it, either invade, but we always still control the sanctions back on there. I mean, sanctions today, more sanctions, like with Russia, you know, more Venezuelan sanctions on the 4 people who know Maduro or the mayor of the town. I mean, it's just, we play these games, you know, like, oh, we'll do you a favor and we'll lift some of the sanctions. And then after they get rid of everything, we'll go back to putting more sanctions on.
Well,
I mean,
look what happened with Iran. After Iran signed the P5+1, the U.S. was supposed to release some of Iran's money back. They never did. Now they're trying to carve it up with these ridiculous lawsuits blaming Iran for 9/11. Again, the sanctions against Iran were not relaxed. In fact, Congress put more sanctions on Iran. So at this point, in service to Israel, the United States government has destroyed its credibility overseas. Every other government knows that you cannot take the U.S. government's word about anything. That they make a promise that sanctions are going to go away, it can't be taken at face value. Kim Jong-un basically played Trump to make himself look better. He got Trump to come on over and pose with him for a photo op twice now. And that makes Kim Jong-un a major figure on the world stage. And I hate to say this, Trump got suckered.
Look at the ABM treaty and the short medium range treaty.
Yeah, the INF
treaty.
Well, the U.S. pulled out of the ABM treaty a couple of years ago, actually.
Yeah, that was under Bush, I think.
Yes.
2000, I believe. Yeah. Hey, do I still have time for just real quick about India and Pakistan?
Yeah, you got about 3 minutes.
I was watching, and they did a poll in India, and 40% of the Indian people think they should strike Pakistan again because they think the Indian didn't do enough to get rid of these terror camps. that, Hey, Mike, you know what? India has satellites. Where's this? I'm not saying the Pakistani intelligence don't have their hand in some of these training camps like the CIA does and Saudi Arabia does, but where's the satellite footage of the damage from the camps? India has multiple satellites, don't they?
Well, the story coming out of Pakistan is that the Indian planes basically dropped their bombs in empty ground and turned to flee when the Pakistani jets showed up. And apparently Pakistan released photos showing where the bombs hit. There's no sign of a camp. It's just empty ground. And that does happen. Well, when you're flying into a country and you're carrying a load of bombs, you're necessarily slow, and all of a sudden you're being intercepted by fighters that are there to shoot you down. You drop your munitions load and you turn tail and you get out of there.
It's like I said, both sides should calm down, but it's just like there's still like a lot of rhetoric going on. I mean, you said it before, and it hasn't gone down. I still see a lot of the...
It's based in this centuries-old religious hate, and that is a dangerous, dangerous combination with nuclear weapons.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Have a good show.
All right, thanks an awful lot here. We've got another caller waiting on the line, but I'm going to wait until after the commercial break here. Story coming on out asking if Trump has overplayed his hand with Saudi Arabia. And it has to do with Trump asking Saudi Arabia to help control global oil prices. And last year, Saudi Arabia agreed. They ramped up production to keep the oil prices down. And Trump then started granting waivers that allowed several countries to keep importing Iranian crude. And oil prices started a major nosedive during the last quarter of the year. This caught Saudi Arabia flat-footed. And Saudi Arabia is viewing this as a betrayal of trust. So it wasn't well thought out. Okay, we're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with a caller after these few words.
Okay, nurse, let's get this man to the ER stat.
Right away, doctor.
We see this every day. Heart attack or angina pain due to blocked and clogged arteries. Chelation can remove obstructions or blockages from arteries and help avoid painful and expensive surgery. Now there's Angioprim. It's a liquid oral chelation product that you take with juice. You start to feel the results fast. Angioprim increases blood flow all over the body, and that means more energy and strength to take on the day with less aches and pains. 60 years of research has gone into chelation, and Angioprim is the result. A safe and easy way to unblock your veins and arteries from buildup that slow circulation.
Paging Dr. Jones. Please report to the emergency room right away.
Log on now for a special radio offer from Angioprim. That's angioprim.com/radio. ANGIOPRIM. Angioprim.com/radio or call 877-882-7221. That's 877-882-7221.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
The reviews for Extendivite are amazing. Here are some from Amazon. By Christine, great for heart palpitations. By Ann, before I started using this product, every afternoon my ankles and my hands would be swollen. That doesn't happen anymore. So if that part of their advertising is true, I have to assume that the rest of it is also. Not to mention, that when I had my yearly blood test, only a few weeks after beginning to use this product, my cholesterol had dropped over 30 points. I'm going to continue to take it. By Croc, I love this product. It really works. By Brad, works great, thank you. Tell us your story. Get your Extendivite today. To order, call 1-877-928-8822. That's 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Join Mike on the air. Call toll-free 800-313-9443. 800-313-9443.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And we're going to go back to the phones to Jim in New Mexico. Aloha, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks for taking my call. I'm sorry about that prank caller. That's just so disrespectful to me that he would do that.
Well, it's just part of the job.
Yeah, well, it's a real nuisance, and I wish those people would just, buzz off.
So what do you want to talk about today?
I was hoping to talk a little bit about Cohen.
Go ahead.
Cohen, I see that sword.
All right, thank you very much. This is getting annoying. All right, so anyway, Turkey is having their largest naval drill in their history, and it involves more than 100 warships, Turkish air and ground forces, and it's basically taking place, started yesterday in the Black Sea, the Aegean Sea, and the Eastern Mediterranean simultaneously. And this is giving Turkey a chance to show off its recently upgraded fleet, which includes over a dozen assault boats and frigates, in addition to corvettes, mine-hunting boats, patrol boats, and submarines. So they're really out there showing their muscle. It's going to get a little crowded over there in the Mediterranean because NATO is starting a massive exercise off the coast of Italy called Dynamic Manta. And that's going to be 10 days of underwater and surface warfare training in the central Mediterranean Sea, involving submarines from Greece, Italy, Spain, Turkey, the United Kingdom, under the control of NATO Submarine Command. And they're joining 9 surface ships from the Netherlands, Canada, Spain, Italy, Turkey, France, and Greece. So they're going to be out there playing Hunt the Submarine. All right. Over in Albania, the anti-government protests are starting to turn violent. The Albanian police had to use tear gas to disperse hundreds of opposition protesters who tried to prevent ruling socialists from entering parliament. The whole world is going a little bit crazy over there. Now, in France, Emmanuel Macron has sparked outrage by declaring that all yellow vests are by default complicit in the unrest that has shaken France for more than 3 months. So this is what they do. They send in agent provocateurs to go on in and commit acts of violence, and then they try and tarnish the entire protest movement with it. Yes, there were only a few people being violent, but you're all equally guilty. That's what Macron is saying. Along with, you're all a bunch of anti-Semites here. And of course, Macron is basically at the forefront of this move to blur anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism, which is something Israel has been wanting for a very, very, very long time indeed. Is to be able to say, you can't criticize the government of Israel, it's anti-Semitic, which is like saying criticizing the Nazis means you hate the German people. All right, we're going to take a break for station identification. We'll be back after these few words.
February is Heart Month. Every year for the month of February, to show our appreciation to Extendivite's faithful customers, we have a sale. If you would like to try Extendivite, now is the time to get a few months ahead and really give Extendivite the time to show you how it works. Most of Extendivite's long-term customers wait for this sale to stock up. People and doctors tell us about the unbelievable improvements that they have experienced in their overall health, not just the heart. Extendivite wants you to experience the power of these herbs. Get a 4-month supply for only $115 for either the capsules or tincture. Please take advantage of this once per year sale and get healthy for life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
This is RBN, the Republic Broadcasting Network.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. Now, over in Canada, apparently Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is in trouble. Former Canadian Attorney General Jody Wilson-Raybould is giving testimony accusing the Prime Minister and other officials of veiled threats to force her to drop a case for political purposes. That would be the Canadian equivalent of obstruction of justice. And Ms. Wilson-Raybould gave testimony before the Canadian House of Commons Justice Committee yesterday, speaking out against members of staff and Prime Minister Trudeau attempting to interfere with an investigation into the SNC-Lavalin Corporation. Now, this scandal began to emerge back on February 7th, and it looks like it could be a bad one. This could actually be the end of Trudeau's career. Yesterday, we reported on how the International Court of Justice basically declared that Great Britain had to return the Chagos Islands to the people who had originally lived there prior to the establishment of the Diego Garcia military base. Great Britain is simply rejecting the decision, saying that this was a bilateral dispute with Mauritius and thus could only go before the International Court of Justice with British consent, which was not given. It's a technicality, but that's what Britain is going to go through. Apparently, after the wonderful success of the F-22 and the F-35 and the Zumwalt destroyer and the Gerald R. Ford and the Independence-class littoral combat ships and the Freedom-class littoral combat ships, the next great adventure for the United States military is to build artificially intelligent directed tanks. These are going to be tanks with no human crews. They're going to be autonomous ground combat vehicles, and they'll have the ability to do everything necessary to take down a target except pull the trigger. According to the current plan, there will be a human operator somewhere nearby on a radio link or satellite link that will need to actually fire the weapon. Maybe, maybe not. I foresee a time in the future where they'll just say to the tank, go in and just kill everything in this area here. So the United States Army is already calling on experts in the field to help it develop this technology, and it will allow a ground combat vehicle such as a tank to automatically detect, target, and engage enemy combatants without the risk of the operator losing their life. Well, it sounds good on paper, but so did the F-35. Head of the U.S. Strategic Command, U.S. Air Force General John Hyten, is basically saying he's worried about the new Russian hypersonic weapons and the future of arms control, and says the U.S. must invest billions in modernization, and hinted at scrapping the last remaining arms control treaty with Moscow. Yeehaw, we got the Cold War back. The money's just going to pour on in. You know, take that, Eisenhower. and basically was testifying before the Senate Armed Services Committee. And he said the new weapon systems unveiled by Russia are not covered by the new START arms control treaty, and the U.S. might have trouble contending with such weapons in the future. Well, that's kind of why Russia designed them the way they designed them. And he says he's concerned that 10 years and beyond, with torpedoes, cruise missiles, and hypersonic can go completely in the other direction, we would have a difficulty. So the only answer is, of course, to take more money away from the American people and spend it on weapons development. The whole point of all these arms control treaties was that everybody could back down and not spend money on weapons. Spend money on things like, roads and bridges and keeping the rails, together so the train doesn't fall off, which is just a big drag on everybody. Make sure the dams don't collapse. But Eisenhower did warn us, and we're seeing it again. Oh, there's a threat. China's a threat. Russia's a threat. Australia's a threat. Monaco's a threat. We need billions more to develop these new amazing weapons. And I want to share a little bit of insight from you, coming from the original Cold War in the 50s and 60s, with all that money that was spent back then. Those weapons were never used. Thankfully, they were never used. But it came close, dangerously close. And today we have the added element of computerized weapon systems that can make mistakes. And we know they do make mistakes. That's what happened to the Iranian passenger jet and to TWA 800. They were brought down by system failures. All right, so let's talk about our domestic politics. And yesterday, as you know, Michael Cohen went into a congressional hearing, and he just put on this fire and brimstone presentation, calling Trump, he's a con man, he's racist, he's a crook, he may look kind, but he's not kind. And they didn't really get the traction they wanted, the Democrats. The reaction has been rather negative. And partly it's because there were no impeachable crimes. There was no collusion. The only thing that they actually had to go on was this payoff to Stormy Daniels and, what's her name, Katie McDougal, to silence them. And nobody knows if that was, in fact, a blackmail payment. If Stormy Daniels and this McDougal contacted the Trump organization and say, boy, do we have a story we can tell the media during your presidential campaign, but our silence can be had for a price. Nobody ever talks about that maybe Trump was the victim in all of this. But we're seeing a negative reaction even in the corporate media. And over, Russia Today described it as a partisan farce, where everybody's screaming shame on you back and forth. It was a partisan political circus, and that's absolutely right. Now, Republican Congressman Mark Meadows wanted to call for a delay because the normal rules are that the opening statement of a witness has to be given to the committee members 24 hours in advance. And Cohen's prepared testimony was given to the corporate media, but not to the members of the committee until he walked in. And then, of course, the Democrats came on back and said, so basically the committee was unprepared to deal with what Cohen was saying. Bill Still is out there saying that the Cohen testimony backfired on the desperate Democrats because, again, there was no indication of collusion. And Cohen said he never saw any indications of collusion. Then he tried to bolster it by saying, but I had my suspicions. I had my suspicions, by God. I didn't see anything, but I suspect. That's not the same thing as proof. You can't go to an impeachment trial because somebody suspects something happened, although the Democrats may try. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network here. Story coming on out of Fox News. Even Fox News was saying that the Cohen testimony was unethical. The Democrats were committing an abuse of power. Even the Washington Post described it as theater. They even had their theater reviewer write the article. And Ann Coulter's out there saying that she gathers she was supposed to gasp when Michael Cohen said that the President of the United States wrote a personal check for the payment of hush money as part of a criminal scheme to violate campaign finance laws. Okay, he just contradicted himself. If it was a personal check to reimburse Michael Cohen for the money he gave to Stormy Daniels and this Playboy model McDougal, then it didn't involve campaign finance. Cohen just shot the whole argument down by saying it was a personal check from Donald Trump. There's no there. I think the reason the Democrats did this is to give fodder for the corporate media to attack Trump and say, you know, Cohen says he's racist, Cohen says he's sexist, Cohen says he's this and that, because the Mueller report is about to be released, and early leaks are saying there's nothing in there either. So the Democrats are trying to salvage this situation and somehow imply that Trump is guilty of something somewhere, even though they found absolutely nothing. Now, Republicans are challenging the credibility of Michael Cohen. It's an easy thing to do. He's an admitted liar. He's been disbarred. He's getting ready to report to prison in early May. And a lot of Republicans were justified in saying, why is this guy even being allowed to testify here? He's an admitted liar. He's admitted lying to Congress before. Why is he back here? The Democrats, on the other hand, gave Cohen the VIP treatment. Oh, did they love him? He's, you know, and basically, he just came on out and said what the Democrats wanted to be said. Accusations that cannot be corroborated, like how Trump made racist statements to him, or the claim that Trump knew about the Nothing Burger Trump Tower meeting beforehand. I mean, they're grasping at straws. Basically, Cohen was regurgitating the old Democrat talking points. And the Democrats were smiling and beaming and clapping and just having a wild old time. Now, Rashida Tlaib is insinuating Mark Meadows is a racist because when he basically stood up and introduced Lynn Patton, who's a top Trump housing official who happens to be black, as a means to push back on Cohen's narrative that the president is a racist. And Meadows said Lynn Patton says she would not work for a man who's a racist. She disagrees with you. And then Rashida came on out and said, well, just having her stand up there was an act of racism. That seems to be the Democrats' attitude right now. Doesn't matter what you do, it's racist. Michael Cohen got a little bit of an unpleasant surprise. He was hit with a criminal referral for violating the Foreign Agents Registration Act. And apparently this followed a heated exchange with Representative Mark Meadows in front of the Oversight Committee. And it had to do with the fact that Cohen had contracts with foreign companies that paid him for access to the Trump administration, including Novartis, which paid Cohen $1.2 million to act as a consultant on the Trump administration, as well as $150,000 from South Korea's Korea Aerospace Industries and a payment from Kazakhstan BTA Bank. And he failed to list these contacts under the Foreign Agents Registration Act. Now, Cohen came on back and said, well, these aren't foreign governments, they're just foreign companies. Well, the Foreign Agents Registration Act doesn't make any distinction. If you're in the United States representing a foreign entity of any kind, you have to fill out the paperwork with the State Department saying, I am here representing this foreign country. So now on top of his existing jail sentence, he's got another problem to deal with here. Okay. Now, this is kind of interesting. It's a little out there. This story's coming out of the Daily Mail in Great Britain, so take it with a grain of salt. But apparently, Giovanni Gambino, who's an heir to the Gambino crime family, is predicting that when Michael Cohen gets sent to jail, he'd better keep his mouth shut, or he could get whacked in prison because inmates love Trump and hate rats. Now, I think Giovanni is trying to send a message to Cohen, that part about keep his mouth shut. I don't know that inmates necessarily love Trump. Certainly they do hate rats, but Cohen's going to a Club Fed. It's not a hard time prison. You know, he's going to have TV and good food and, you know, recreation. All right, well, Joe Biden apparently is getting closer and closer to a decision to run for president in 2020. Apparently, he got the family together. And they all had a show of hands, and the family said that they support him moving forward in another run for the presidency in 2020. And we'll probably have a decision about that in a few days. And already, I'll bet you Hillary is on the phone to Joe saying, don't you dare do that. Don't you dare do that. Okay. In fact, I'm wondering what Hillary's going to do about that huge crowded field of nominees going into the Democratic primaries in 2020, because they're going to split the vote. But looking at the way that all of the same corporate media that aided Hillary in 2016 is already starting to ban conservatism now, I think Hillary is going to step in. There was that comment the other day about she's still leading the left. I think she's going to step in. She hasn't announced yet, but she's going to step in. Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and take a phone call. Joe in Tennessee. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, I was hoping this thing with Cohen would go on for weeks, just like I was hoping the Kavanaugh thing would go on for weeks, because it's just a great exposure of the snakes and the creeps in our government. I mean, having Lanny Davis sitting right behind him was priceless for anybody that knows who he is. I'm sure most of the public doesn't, but that's okay. They'll find out. It's Clinton's fixer, Clinton's lawyer.
Yes.
I really like Jim Jordan and his strategy, because you see, the mainstream media ignores a lot of the pro-Trump things that have happened, and like about the FBI and all the people that have been fired for corruption. Mm-hmm. So Jim Jordan took his opportunity to list all the people that have been fired by the FBI or from the FBI or the Department of Justice, and it breaks through. See, what the Republicans have to do in hearings like this is break through the controlled media paradigm and directly give this information to a lot of people that don't know it. Most people don't know about all these people that have been fired from the Department of Justice and the FBI. And you could see, like, when they do that, the panic in the establishment media's, coverage. They don't want the Republicans can hijack, and the alt-right members of the Republican Party can actually hijack these hearings and use them as a way to propel our propaganda into the mainstream, because and you'll see these hearings come to a real abrupt end when the Republicans start doing that. If they had any sense, every question I would just say, you're a liar, but did you hear about, Seth Rich? Do you know that the server that they talk about with WikiLeaks was never investigated by the FBI? Things like that. And you'd watch, the Democrats would be so scared of having these hearings because their propaganda is so weak. Their case is so weak, but many people don't know this information. So I urge any Republicans that might be listening on, or any of their aides, to use these opportunities to speak directly without any kind of government, media, deep state, spokespeople interfering with the message, and directly propel our information into the mainstream consciousness of the American people.
Well, you're right about the optics on the case, and the hearings with Michael Cohen were only supposed to be for 3 days. Today's the third day, and they're back behind closed doors today. So I guess they realized that yesterday really didn't work out as well as they wanted.
No, and I like I said about the Kavanaugh hearings, I was hoping it would continue to go on because the exposure of these people is just priceless. They speak to everybody like they're all left-wing college, Antifa members. They have no feel for no sense of the silent majority, the independent voters, and the flyover country middle Americans. They have absolutely no sense. But it's like they're
they think they're superior. They assume they're superior. Anyway, listen, Joe, I'm sorry to do this to you. We're going to have to let you go.
That's okay.
Got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back.
It happens more often than we can imagine. In my case, I was sitting at home, and out of nowhere, I just started feeling uncomfortable. Then it got worse, and I started perspiring. I tried to ignore it, but I waited too long. The chest pain came as we were driving to the hospital emergency. I felt my life clock begin to tick. I barely survived. There was lots of damage done to my heart. What do I do now? I was lucky. I took a leap of faith and tried a 7-herb formula with hawthorn, garlic, cayenne, and more called Extendivite. Herbs have been used for thousands of years to keep us healthy. If you're not using Extendivite as a preventative supplement, maybe it's time to start. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What this country is coming to, I sure would like to know. If they don't do something by and by, the rich will live and the poor will die. Doggone, the panic is on. Can't get no way, can't draw no pay.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show again. And as you know, Ilhan Omar has been savaged by Israel supporters for getting up in Congress and just mentioning the fact that AIPAC wields a tremendous amount of influence over Congress, which is an established fact. But it's like the Fight Club. The first rule of AIPAC is you don't talk about AIPAC. And apparently she went over there. So the media came on out just slamming her. And it's drawing a lot of criticism, saying, what exactly is it she did wrong? Because Democrats will call out conservative lobbies. Republicans do the same thing for liberal lobbies. This is politics as usual. That's exactly what Omar did, saying these politicians are listening to this lobby. And apparently NPR is still insisting their coverage was fair and that it was all Omar's fault. Associated Press's story on Ilhan Omar left out a lot of the story. And again, distortion on Israel-Palestine isn't unusual for the Associated Press. That's why the corporate media is useless. You're not getting the news, you're getting somebody else's opinion. Okay, apparently the Federal Elections Commission has filed a complaint against Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for illegal payments to her boyfriend. And apparently the Coolidge Reagan Foundation filed this complaint with the FEC, alleging that Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's campaign may have illegally funneled thousands of dollars through a political action committee to her boyfriend, Riley Roberts. That's a tacky no-no. And a lot of people are starting to say, Alexandria, I mean, you know, she's obviously very young. She's energetic. She's pretty. She's a politician, which means she knows how to manipulate people, but there isn't much beyond that. There's no there. Now, CNN is admitting that maybe they should have been a little bit more careful last Monday when they had that town hall discussion for Bernie Sanders, because it turns out that the audience was loaded with Democratic plants who were there to basically wreck Bernie Sanders, get him out of the race as quickly as possible. I mean, we're still in 2018 and already the dirty tricks are starting. By the time we actually, I'm sorry, 2019. We just got through the 2018 midterms. We're in 2019. By the time we get into 2020 proper, the dirty tricks are going to be going all over the place. It's going to make Watergate, you know, look like a school picnic here. So apparently, it was pointed out at least 4 attendees had deep roots in the D.C. lobby and the Democratic Party, including Tara Ebersole, who asked about Sanders' universal health care plan. CNN anchor Wolf Blitzer introduced her as a former biology professor, but even her LinkedIn page claims she currently works as chair of the Baltimore County Democratic Party. Now, remember the other day there was this Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act, and it failed because the Democrats overwhelmingly voted against it. And this was a bill that would have said that if a baby is born alive following a failed abortion, it must be given proper medical care. And doctors who kill a baby once it's born would be subject to criminal prosecution. They should anyway. It's a murder. It's a homicide with malice aforethought. And it turns out the corporate media isn't carrying this vote. They're not reporting on it. The independent media is talking about it. Corporate media, nope, just looking the other way, because they realize the optics on it are really bad. That most Americans, even if they're in favor of abortion, they find this idea of literally killing a baby after it's born repugnant. And by the way, 6 of the Democrats running in 2020 voted no on this bill to provide medical care to babies surviving abortions. And that was Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar, Kirsten Gillibrand, and Bernie Sanders. And the sheer hypocrisy, because you see the Democrats down there at the southern border, oh, these poor children, they're separated from their, we can't let them be separated. They're suffering so hard. We've got to give them money and food. And up in New York, well, throw the kid in the trash. We don't want him. Gloria Steinem on NBC's Today is comparing pro-lifers to Nazis simply on the basis that Adolf Hitler was opposed to abortion. That's like saying anybody who wears shoes is a Nazi because Hitler wore shoes and tied them with little Nazis. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, the number 2, keep it today.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org, and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more. Plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AirOutfitting.com.
Some are maxed out all their credit cards. Some are working 2 jobs and living in cars. Minimum wage won't pay for a roof, won't pay for a drink. If you gotta have proof, just scratch yourself, Mr. CEO. See how far $5.15 an hour will go. Take a part-time job at one of your stores. I bet you can't make it here anymore.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. Now, we briefly mentioned yesterday the arrest of Roberto and William Isaias and their connections with Planned Parenthood. And apparently they were running these businesses that trafficked in aborted baby parts and just selling them all over the place. The story is starting to get a little more interesting. They are from Ecuador, and apparently when they were in Ecuador, they basically had this bank they set up. They ran it into the ground. They presented false balance sheets to profit from the bailout funds. And Ecuador says the family cost the country a total of $661 million. And here's where it gets interesting. Knowing they were in legal trouble, the Isaias family began dumping large amounts of campaign contributions into American political campaigns, including $90,000 to Obama's 2012 reelection. And as a result, after reaching out to then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton for asylum, the Isaias were granted expedited immigration to the United States. Hillary Clinton's State Department then rebuffed attempts by Ecuador to extradite them to face justice. They've been tried in absentia, and they're looking at 8 years in prison each. And now it looks like they're going to go on back there. So all tangled in with the Obamas and the Clintons and Planned Parenthood. All right, we've got some callers on the line. Terry in California, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Mike, I don't know if you talked about this bill that Ted Cruz introduced to reinforce the U.S. position behind the Israelis staying in the Golan Heights.
Yes, yeah, we talked about that earlier in the show.
Okay. The other thing I wanted to say was the Last American Vagabond on YouTube said that the Israelis buried nuclear waste in 20 different locations in the Golan Heights. Did you hear about that?
Yeah, that came out of the United Nations, and Israel is denying it, as they always do. And it's not just the occupation. That bill that's in Congress would recognize Israel's sovereignty over the Golan. In other words, they're getting ready to say, we're going to chop the Golan Heights off of Syria and make it part of Israel. And again, looking at the hypocrisy relative to Crimea.
But it's all just a violation of law. You know, I mean, they got to change international law if they're going to do that legally.
Well, at that level of politics, it's almost like international laws become a joke because Israel ignores international law. Everything they're doing in the West Bank and in Gaza is a violation of international law. You know, the burying of the nuclear waste in some, in what occupied territory, that's a violation of international law. It just isn't a factor any longer.
Well, Ted Cruz is, one of the biggest traitors in America. He's Israeli Zionist puppet, and his allegiance goes to them and not to the. Yeah. Okay, Mike, thanks. So we'll talk to you next time.
All right, thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go and switch over to Bill in Wisconsin. Aloha, Bill. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I want to point out Joe there that calls in. He wanted the Kavanaugh hearings to keep going. I would direct him. A friend of mine gave me an article from a publication called Catholic Family News about a recent vote or decision by the Supreme Court, which included Justice John Roberts and Justice Brett Kavanaugh siding with the liberal bloc to refuse to hear cases coming up from Kansas and Louisiana, which would have cut off Medicaid funds to Planned Parenthood. If you go back to the Kavanaugh hearing and go back to Susan Collins, when she gave her very considered opinion as to where he would stand on the court, she made it quite clear that there would be no overturning, in her opinion, by Justice Kavanaugh of the Roe v. Wade decision. So, I heard that, and, we all kind of felt, well, this guy Kavanaugh, let's get behind him. But in addition to that, Kavanaugh worked with Rod Rosenstein on the investigation of, let me see here. Ken Starr.
Yes.
All right, which you are very familiar with, Michael. The fact that they didn't go into the Vince Foster thing, they had plenty of information. So Rod Rosenstein and Kavanaugh were working with Ken Starr, to kind of slap Clinton on the wrist, and it wasn't as thorough an investigation and impeachment that it should have been.
Well, Kavanaugh's got problems, but again, there's a reason we call it the swamp. Everybody in there is tainted and corrupt, they've all got these connections going back years. They've spent their entire career, forming this network of corrupting links and doing each other favors, I don't want to redo the Kavanaugh hearings here because the fact is he's now a Supreme Court justice and he can't be fired. So at this point, it's all moot. But yeah, I'm very upset over the fact that he was part of the Vince Foster cover-up because, obviously that had an impact on my life. Okay, anything else?
One other item. Everybody's wondering, why is Trump say one thing, does another? Well, he appointed Alex Acosta, his labor secretary. Now, if you're familiar with him, he was the prosecutor in the Jeffrey Epstein, again, slap on the wrist.
Yes.
Where Epstein got only 13 months, in jail for that abuse of the young ladies there on his island. And his
but that's now
there.
being re-examined because a judge has ruled that plea deal was actually illegal. And so Epstein may find himself getting hauled off to the Huskow again.
Yeah, but I'm wondering if maybe this has something to do with Trump saying one thing and not following up, doing another.
Well, it's entirely possible that Trump is compromised by Epstein because, a lot of very famous people were showing up at his mansion in Florida, and then later on that island he's got down there in the Caribbean. And if you're a person of power and influence and wealth, you would have to be an absolute idiot to walk into either place and not know that it's had to be wired with cameras and microphones. And so Epstein probably has the goods on a lot of major players, and that is probably why he got that sweetheart wrist slap plea deal in the first place. Whether he's still got the connections and the juice to shut down the current investigation or not remains to be seen. But, there's a lot of blackmail that goes on inside the halls of power.
Oh, yeah, I fully agree. Well, that's all I have, Michael.
All right, well, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go, Bill. Phone lines are now open. Getting on back to the news here. Article out of the Political Insider saying that it's shameful that the 2020 Democrats keep toying with reparations. And Senator Elizabeth Warren is out there saying she also supports reparations for all African Americans whose ancestors were slaves. And apparently even broadened the reparation scope to include the descendants of Native Americans whom European settlers displaced. Okay, what they're doing here is they're trying to buy the black and Native American votes. That's the message. Okay, if you vote for us, we're going to take money away from all the white people and give it to you. That's exactly what this is all about. They're not going to buy the votes during the election. That would be illegal. But they're buying the votes. This is a legal way to buy the vote. Bread and circuses. Anyway, let's talk about the economic news. Earlier, I made the comment about how unwise it is to be provoking China militarily at the same time, you're trying to come to some kind of a trade agreement, and apparently things are not going very well. The U.S. trade war is basically at the boiling point, and you're seeing these tit-for-tat exchanges between the two countries that are just adding to the tension. And apparently it's expanding to include areas with much smaller economies like Venezuela and Africa, according to Forbes. So the next U.S.-China trade war is not, it won't be fought in Washington or Beijing. It's going to be fought in Africa, where China's been an active investor antagonizing the U.S. The short version is the United States is getting worried that China and Russia are expanding their economic activity across the globe because they know how to make things. They have things to sell other countries want to buy, and the United States no longer does. So the U.S. wants to go back to reinforce its market share militarily. Anyway. Apparently, the latest demand from U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer is that China must allow unilateral enforcement by Washington. In other words, that a U.S.-China trade deal would allow the United States to punish Beijing for predatory practices that include theft of intellectual property and technology, barriers to imports, and subsidization of exports. And I think that's going to be the deal breaker. I think that's going to be the deal killer right there. Again, not that China is disposed to be nice to the United States right now. Today, China runs a $337 billion trade surplus with the United States, and it's growing by about $2 billion a month. And the actual difference in average tariff rates between the U.S. and China is just 2%. And that's not enough to cause this imbalance. This trade surplus imbalance comes from U.S. policies, which basically have abandoned manufacturing and relied on imports from China. We don't have products to send out. Anyway. People are finally starting to talk about the fact that the debt is a problem. In fact, somebody was out there saying that our national debt, which has crossed the $22 trillion line, is a security threat. And it really is. We're on the verge of a new credit crisis. Now, the debt trap has ensnared millions of Americans, and they're apparently just going around absolutely convinced that the United States government, which is $22 trillion in debt, will somehow protect them and save them from themselves. Folks, it is not going to happen. There's going to come a time when nobody is going to loan the U.S. government any more money. And when that time comes, if you are dependent on the government for either welfare or a salary, you are going to be in a world of hurt. Now, of course, the government can just start creating money out of thin air. That would bring us into Weimar-style hyperinflation. This economy is heading for a big crash somewhere down the road. We don't know when. But we've gone past the point of no return. Actually, this economy was doomed back in 1913 when the U.S. Congress and President Woodrow Wilson unconstitutionally transferred the authority to coin and regulate our money supply to a privately owned central bank that was not there to serve the country and its people, but simply to transfer the real wealth of the country, the hard assets, from our pockets to their pockets. And it's pretty much succeeded. The bankers own all the hard assets, and we've got pockets full of ink and paper. Ford is now laying off thousands from its China joint venture. And they're talking about thousands of workers. And they're going to be laid off as a result of weak auto sales in the world's second largest economy. It's a sign of continuing weakness for autos, leading into the second quarter of 2019. And There's actually a video that we put up at whatreallyhappened.com that basically shows all of these fields full of cars that have been manufactured to keep the supply chains intact and to keep the workers working, and nobody's buying them, and they're just piling up. We've got this overflow lot at the bottom of the hill. Used to be a drive-in movie theater, then it was a flea market. It was a lot of fun, a lot of cool things at the flea market. Now it's just full of cars from the dealerships that they can't sell. Nobody's got the money, and nobody wants to borrow right now because they don't have confidence that they're going to be able to make those car payments, especially because the auto loans, they're pushing variable rate because they don't want to get caught with the Fed's floating rate. It's a real mess here. Over in the European Union, a European Commission economist, Professor Gerhard Hanepi, is saying that the disintegration of global capitalism could be the trigger for World War III. And the professor argued that since the 2008 financial crash, the global economy has moved away from integrated capitalism into a disintegrating shift marked by the same sorts of trends that preceded previous world wars. In other words, in his view, the integrated global economy was keeping things calm, and as other countries start to move away from dollar hegemonic domination, he sees it as a threat. We're clearly heading into a new world war. There's no doubt about it. And everybody's going to have their own pet peeve and their own pet villain as to who is to blame for it. And you got to be prepared for it, folks. You really do. We're going to take another break for commercials. We will be right back.
Do you know there is an ongoing war right here in America? Are you aware that U.S. citizens have been classified as enemies of the state since 1933? Have you recognized that our entire government is really a vast network of interlocking corporations engaged in commerce? Look up Title 28, Section 3002. Tune in to In Defense of Humanity on Saturday nights at 7 p.m. Central Time. Find out what's really going on and learn how to protect yourself and your family as flesh and blood men and women living in a corporate reality.
Many people write us about their experience with Extendivite. Allow me to read you some from Amazon.com. It really does work like the review says it does. I cannot believe that after the first few days, I didn't feel as sluggish or clogged up. It has had a profound impact on my physical, emotional well-being. I'm skeptical as most people about products and their claims, and I never write reviews, but this is a wonderful product and I recommend it to everyone. Great product. It has brought my blood pressure from the mid-150s over the 80s to the mid-130s over mid-80s, along with diet and exercise in just the past couple of months. Excellent. Thank you, David. Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Do you worry a lot? If you're forgetful, nervous, moody, or overwhelmed, chances are you're not protecting yourself from the ravaging effects of stress and anxiety. No matter the cause, ongoing stress and elevated levels of the stress hormone cortisol can rob your memory, your health, your quality of life, and your future. Now you can combat the effects of stress and anxiety while improving your memory and recall at the same time with the dietary supplement Calm and Clever. Studies show that the ingredients in Calm and Clever reduce cortisol by as much as 30% in as little as 1 to 2 weeks and increase your ability to recall facts, names, and numbers in 4 to 12 weeks. Calm and Clever was created by scientist Kurt Hendricks, a principal investigator in 2 NIH-funded studies on Alzheimer's disease. Try Calm and Clever for 2 months. You'll feel the difference. Call 1-800-758-8746 or go to calmandclever.com.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight. Women.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And we're still talking about the economic news. Over at Walmart, they're getting ready to phase out their greeters, the guys in the blue vest that greet you at the front of the store. And Jeff Dunham, of course, had Walter as a greeter, greeting in a way that Walmart would not like. But apparently, they're going to replace them with what is called a customer host. And the problem is there are job requirements for the customer host where they have to be able to lift 25 pounds, climb ladders, and obviously to be able to stand for long periods. And this means that many of the disabled workers working at Walmart could be out of a job. And so, because a lot of the greeters working at Walmart have cerebral palsy, spina bifida, and other physical disabilities. And for them, that job as a greeter at Walmart, it provides income, it's a source of pride, keeps them out there. So I hope Walmart has a change of heart on that one here. Over in Chicago, I'm always talking about the infrastructure and how it's been neglected by the government in their rush to give money to Israel and to the war machine and to themselves and to all their friends around the globe here. Over in Chicago, there are 75 miles of streets that have not been improved since the Great Depression. That's probably going to come as a shock. 75 miles of streets were built in the 1930s under the Federal Works Progress Administration. And these roads were built without engineered sidewalks, gutters, or drainage. It's just basically a strip of pavement on the dirt and gravel. And about 8 miles of those streets are in the 19th Ward on the south side. Over at Duke University, there is a freshman, a young lady, who was interviewed by Playboy magazine because she's paying for her college education at Duke by starring in porn films. And she's done 9 of them so far. And she said she needs to do that to cover the $60,000 annual tuition bill at this private Raleigh, North Carolina university. And she said it was basically only 3 choices: take out gigantic student loans, not go to college at all, or join the sex industry. And she chose the latter one. And that, I think, says something also a little negative about our society. Okay. All right, somebody conducted a poll and discovered, to no surprise, that more Americans favor a border wall than favor the Green New Deal. And, oh, there's the music. We've got to take a break for station identification. We'll be right back after these few words.
Homeowners, are you in foreclosure, expecting to be served with a foreclosure lawsuit, or suspect your lender has coerced you into an illegal mortgage transaction? A huge number of mortgages made in the last 10 years have legal issues and are possibly defective. State laws and the U.S. Supreme Court have upheld that defective mortgage documents are grounds for foreclosure defense and for if your mortgage has been sold or assigned since closing the loan, it may be defective and you may be paying the wrong party, and the lender may not have standing or the right to foreclose or collect payments under the law. If you would like to know if your mortgage is legal or not, or know if you are paying the right party, we can help. Our initial consultations are free of charge. We are not attorneys. We are legal researchers and work closely with experienced lawyers who know how to help you find the evidence to help you keep your home. Call toll free 1-855-2-KEEP-IT. That's 1-855-2-KEEP-IT today.
You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, because you can handle the truth.
What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero, because World War III is a really bad idea. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. Now, interestingly enough, now that the war in Syria is pretty much over, the Syrian refugees who fled to Europe are starting to go home. That's going to be good for the people in Europe. And interestingly enough, BBC did a story about it titled, "The Syrians Returning Home After Years of Fleeing War." This is a direct contradiction of the last 8 years of the BBC insisting that the Syrian refugees were fleeing Assad. And obviously, now that they're going home, you can't go on saying they're afraid of Assad. So they're going home to restart their lives, and I think that is a good thing. All right, take care of that. All right. Now then, apparently over in Great Britain, George Eustice has now quit over the Brexit delay. And this is another blow to Theresa May, because Eustice resigned over opposing a possible extension to Article 50. We're coming up on the deadline date, and the Remainers are saying, well, we've got to delay it. We need a deal. We need this. We need that. There was even talk of delaying it out for another couple of years to get around this Irish backstop issue. But we're starting to see Theresa May's government come apart over this whole thing. Meanwhile, Italy is primed and ready to follow Brexit, and Brussels is terrified. And apparently all of Italy is watching what Britain is doing and is going to do. The EU worked great for the Eurocrats, and it wasn't good for the Europeans at all. Now that we're getting more and more hostile toward China, we're starting to see some China bashing going on. And by the way, story was on Fox News here. Senate investigators are warning of Chinese state-run centers at more than 100 U.S. colleges. And the idea is China has opened these centers on these campuses, pouring over $158 million into what they call the Confucius Institutes that spread Chinese influence while going largely unmonitored by the U.S. government. And China's government controls nearly every aspect of the institutes, including the funding, staffing, and programming, according to a new bipartisan report from the Senate's Permanent Subcommittee on Investigations. And the warning comes amid heightened concern about whether China's growing global footprint, propelled by massive investments in everything from foreign roads and ports to 5G wireless technology, pose a security and counter-espionage risk to the United States and other countries. Meanwhile, all those pro-Israel centers on college campuses continue to be ignored. There's been another stinky badge incident here. Hang on just a second. All right. Apparently, 2 cops down in Miami, Florida, have been charged with crimes after one of them punched a handcuffed teenager for no reason, and the other one tried to help him cover it up. This is Sergeant Manuel Reguero and his partner in crime, Officer Alexander Gonzalez. They were arrested and charged with misdemeanor battery and evidence tampering, respectively. Now, Gonzalez is the one charged with evidence tampering, and he's actually in more trouble, even though he didn't punch the teenager, because he tried to destroy the video evidence of his friend punching the tree by removing the batteries from the cameras. Apparently unaware that in the modern age of digital cameras and flash memory, that removing the batteries does not, in fact, remove the video. Little bit of an oopsie there here. We have been talking about how victimhood has become the new status symbol, where the more victimized you are, the higher you're standing in the eyes of at least the liberals, not the conservatives so much here. And I'm not the only person who's concerned about this. Over at KateHahn.com, they have an article, When Victimhood Masquerades as a Virtue. And it starts out saying, when did strength stop being a virtue? And it did so over time as the government became the nanny. It didn't happen overnight. It was a slow progression built over years through things like Social Security, welfare, government schools, and so forth. The government made us weak, biddable, and needy above all else. And as an example, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has announced this idea like the Green New Deal for those, quote, unwilling to work, unquote, as if unambitiousness is touted as the ideal today. That if you just want to sit and veg, that's the new norm. Now, generations ago, and this includes when I was born, working hard was held up as the goal to strive for, having a good job, being good at that job, not just for the money, but for the pride of doing a good job. Anyway, we are definitely going communistic here. All right, we're going to do a shout out to our Honor affiliates who are just now rejoining the network, and we're going to go back to the phones to Jim in New York. Aloha, welcome to the show. What's on your mind? Hello?
Was reading an article.
Oh, there you are.
I'm here. Was reading an article that said that Pence is behind this Venezuela coup attempt. And he's managing the operation, if you will. And he's contacted with the Guaido, I don't know how to say his name. But this is like Pence's operation.
Yeah, we knew that. Pence went down to Bogota, Colombia to meet with Guaido, and that's put Guaido in a bit of a spot because Guaido wants to go back to Venezuela because he's got to be seen to lead the opposition. But if he does so, he's looking at serious jail time because he violated a court-ordered travel ban to go to Colombia.
Yes. It makes me, Trump reminds me of Reagan. Some say that Bush was really running the Reagan administration for quite a few years.
Yes.
I get the feeling that Trump is a lot like Reagan in that he may not really be running the show. Maybe it's Pence. What do you think?
It's entirely possible. But my observation on that would be if Pence is really calling the shots, why is everybody working so hard to get Trump out of office? Because they're just going to put Pence into office and nothing will change.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. But I don't think Venezuela, it's so obvious.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be a hard thing to sell. For one, the Venezuelans, they all know it would be about oil. So a lot of Americans know would be about oil. It'd be a hard sell.
Well, I think at this point the attitude is they're going through the motions and They're saying all the things they need to say. I think the U.S. government understands that most people around the world aren't really buying it, but we're not in a position to be able to stop it. As long as our election system is this corrupt, we really have lost control over the government.
Yeah. I'm disappointed in Alexandria Cortez because she made a comment about Venezuela saying, well, they don't have democracy. So I had a little hope for her that she'd be against these wars.
No, she's fully on board, and she's also completely wrong. Venezuela is a democracy. They had elections last year. Maduro won.
Yeah. So I'm disappointed. I thought, but I guess Nancy Pelosi probably tapped her on the shoulder and said, "Oh, you can't talk about this. Talk about green energy or some nonsense, crazy issue."
Yeah, maybe. All right. Well, Jim, thanks an awful lot for the phone call. We're going to let you go.
Thank you.
And we're going to get on back here to the news. The Senate in Oklahoma has passed permitless carry, and Governor Stitt has signed it. So if you live in Oklahoma and you can legally own a firearm, you can basically just carry it without a permit. And it allows veterans, active duty, and reserve military people 18 or older to carry without a permit. It prohibits felons, domestic violence offenders, and individuals who've been adjudicated as mentally ill from carrying a firearm. The measure leaves in place the protections for private property owners to restrict firearms from being carried on their property, the so-called gun-free zones, which, by the way, if they worked, 95% of the mass shootings wouldn't be taking place on them. Higher educational institutions will be able to set their carry policies as well. There's been an alarming trend for non-military federal agencies to start amassing arsenals. And we're seeing like the Social Security Administration and the Internal Revenue Service making massive purchases of ammo and weapons. Now, I understand that the IRS has an enforcement division which carries sidearms. I can't imagine why the Social Security Administration would want to stockpile guns and ammo. Maybe this is preparation by the federal government as a whole against a possible uprising by the American people. But if our political leaders think these civil service workers are going to risk their lives to protect the elites, it's not going to happen. They'll drop those guns and they'll run. Anyway, apparently the Government Accountability Office found Immigration and Customs Enforcement had spent 8 times more on weapons and ammo than it had officially disclosed to the office. Apparently, they're buying more ammunition than is being used by the military. They are just really, really stocking up here. All right, getting into the world of social media and computers. Facebook eliminated over 1 billion page views to conservative websites in 2018. They rigged social media for the midterms. And thanks to James O'Keefe and Project Veritas, they have the plan because there is a whistleblower who has left Facebook and is now apparently working for Project Veritas. And they put out a video in which she says, yeah, Facebook engages in routine suppression of all conservative content. And if they're doing this now, they're getting ready for 2020. Because while Donald Trump may have forgotten how important social media was to his winning the White House, Hillary Clinton has not forgotten. And I think this is social media setting the stage for a Hillary Clinton win in 2020. And that scares the heck out of me. Over in Russia, a Soyuz rocket has successfully launched 6 OneWeb satellites in the first of 21 planned launches to place 650 of these satellites in orbit, with the ultimate goal of providing broadband internet everywhere to everyone. This is direct from satellite to your device. Boy, would I like to sign up for that one. And again, we're seeing Russia and China do these amazing things. They're engaging in business, they're manufacturing, trade, peace through commerce. The United States isn't. The Federal Trade Commission has slammed TikTok with a record fine for spying on preteens. Now, TikTok is this video sharing social apps. It works a lot like the old Vine, and it's targeted on preteen users, and it got hit with a $5.7 million fine for collecting personal information about preteen users. So the Federal Trade Commission announced that TikTok agreed to the settlement after the allegations that the app knowingly and illegally stored the names, email addresses, and locations of users under the age of 13. This was a violation of the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. And great that the FTC is unwilling to cede privacy protection for young internet users. But what about us grown-ups? We need an adult Online Privacy Protection Act, because a lot of our information is collected without our knowledge and without our permission. And we are just being inundated with all kinds of telemarketing calls. They ignore the do not call list, get all kinds of junk mail. And getting on back to TikTok, one of the reasons the fine was so high is apparently TikTok got thousands of complaints from concerned parents about the collecting of data and didn't change anything at all. They just went on with it. Now, if you have a smart assistant in your home, this next story is going to raise the hair on the back of your neck. Smart assistants like Siri, Google Home, and Amazon Echo could soon be implemented with a moral artificial intelligence to decide whether to report their owners for breaking the law. I think that is just so Orwell. It's unbelievable. Scientists at the University of Bergen, Norway, proposed this idea of inserting morals into AI code at the ACM conference they just held here in Hawaii on artificial intelligence, ethics, and society. Well, they're obviously not talking about ethics and society if they're actually saying this is a good thing. What they're proposing is that your little smart assistant, which is listening to you all the time, it's listening for you to say their name so it can turn on the light and pretend like it's waking up. But it's listening all the time. And apparently it's going to listen to what you're saying in your own home. And if it determines what you're saying may constitute illegal action, like you're talking about, smoking a marijuana cigarette or something, it's going to report you to the police. I'm not going to have one of those in my house. And if they start doing that, well, I need Siri to get the car to work, but nothing says I have to keep Siri on here in the house. That is just way outside the borders of common sense. Apparently, Donald Trump Jr. was on the Tucker Carlson show, and they're basically bashing these social media companies for shadow banning, saying it is fascism, and they both agree with that. Now, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, shadow banning is a very sneaky way of censoring your content. If you go into your Facebook or your Twitter page, you will see your posts and your tweets, and you will think they are out there in the Twitterverse. But if anybody else logged in under credentials other than your own goes to your Twitter stream, they won't see it. That's what shadow banning is. Now, the Catholic Church is still reeling from the aftermath of this summit that they had at the Vatican regarding the church pedophile scandal. Two of the Catholic cardinals there had said that the problem wasn't really the clergy, the problem was homosexuality. And now a key organizer, Charles Scicluna of Malta, has come out with the opposing point of view, saying that the gay subculture in seminaries has nothing to do with sex abuse of minors. which I think is going to surprise a lot of people, that the church is acknowledging there is a gay subculture in the seminaries. Over in the Philippines, outspoken President Rodrigo Duterte is saying the Catholic Church will be gone in 25 years. It will disappear. People will forget it. Well, I don't think they'll forget it. And basically, he says the Catholic Church is in decline because of the string of sexual abuse cases and corruption within its ranks. And he's absolutely right. It's a major problem. And it's hard to imagine why people would still be in that church knowing what they know. But, you know, that belief is a form of enslavement. And it's very hard to walk away. We got to take a break for commercials, and we will be right back.
Many people tell us about their experience with Extendivite. Just listen to what Glenn has to say.
Prior to taking it, I had diabetic neuropathy. The Extendivite reduced that significantly. Acid reflux was reduced. I had athlete's foot, very severe. Trimmed that down to about 75%. Dandruff, almost completely gone. I had occipital neuralgia at the base of my skull. I was having migraines, reduced by about 90%. Heart palpitations, my heart would kind of stall out. I would skip a beat. Very uncomfortable. And when walking from downstairs going to sleep, by the time I got to the bedroom, which is just one flight of stairs, my heart was pounding, coming out of my chest. My vision was blurry. This completely solved that problem. Great product. Thanks.
Tell us your story. Get Extendivite today. Call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com.
Extend your life with Extendivite.
Folks, we're living in a world the likes of which we've never perceived any clearer than we do now. The plan for global governance has been in the works for generations and would have likely been achieved by now, but for the fact that the globalists left open their Achilles heel. With all their tools, Federal Reserve System, fiat currency, no child left behind, and then Common Core education introduced to our schools to dumb us down, vaccines, pharmaceuticals to lobotomize us, GMO foods, insertion of compromised or bought and paid for politicians, judges, mainstream media propaganda, all pieced together like a puzzle designed to ultimately bring the world under submission. But with all their strategy, they forgot one thing: knowledge. And knowledge is power. With knowledge, their bombardment is nullified. Folks, with that, as brilliant and knowledgeable as you've become, among the wisest audience of any radio audience in the world, and you are, I want you to take a moment to reflect and ask yourself, how much of that knowledge did I obtain from Republic Broadcasting Network? How high has my consciousness been raised since I've been a listener? How fast am I now able to discriminate truth from fake news by being a Republic Broadcasting listener? How clear am I now able to see the world since I've been listening to RBN? Ask yourselves those questions, folks. Then ask yourself, what is that knowledge worth to me? Like my morning coffee, how would I survive without it? A voice of truth in a sea of lies. Do we not all need to make sure it survives? Like public broadcasting, we are now finding we can only survive with listener support. Censorship, advertisers being attacked, truth itself being attacked. It's the only way through this. We at Republic Broadcasting humbly ask you to become a supporter. Look at your budget and make a determination of what Republic Broadcasting is worth to you and what you can afford on a monthly basis. Go to republicbroadcasting.org and pledge $20, $30, $40, $50, if possible, $100 a month or more if it's affordable. Click the donate button and become a regular monthly donor. Assure both us and yourself that Republic Broadcasting truth will continue to flow like that morning coffee. The network thanks you.
What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. Visit us online at whatreallyhappened.com. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. We're talking about what's going on with the Catholic Church. And again, it's a major problem in the Catholic Church. It is not limited to the Catholic Church. These kind of problems are happening in every religion and even outside of religion. And in my view, it is a sickness here. But as you know, Cardinal Pell has come into focus recently because of his controversy. And it's resulted in a little bit of embarrassment because there is a portrait of Cardinal Pell in the Vatican. It was unveiled just 2.5 years ago. And the portrait Pell's just been convicted of these historic sex offenses. The portrait was commissioned following a fundraising event in London held by the Knights of Malta, which is a Roman Catholic order founded more than 1,000 years ago to care for the poor and sick. And the order's senior officers have included some of the most eminent figures in society, including Field Marshal Lord Guthrie and the late Hugh Van Cutsem, who was one of the Prince of Wales' close friends. So it's an embarrassment. It doesn't mean that the Knights of Malta are engaged in this sort of thing, but people are going to look and they're going to say, how far does this go? How high up does it go? Janet Street Porter is out there saying Pope Francis has proved the Catholic Church is totally incapable of tackling the stomach-churning sexual and financial abuses that are rotting it from the inside out. And it starts out, when Pope Francis was elected, he won our hearts when he washed the feet of beggars, chose to live in a simple hostel rather than the sumptuous papal apartments, and opted for a second-hand car, a far cry from his predecessors who wore beautiful handmade slippers costing thousands of pounds. We wanted Pope Francis to signal a new set of values for the Catholic Church. That has not turned out to be the case. 6 years on, Francis has just hosted the first papal conference into sexual abuse, and at the end of 4 days, you might as well ask, why did he bother? So it is a problem, and as I understand it, attendance at Catholic churches is in decline. There's less money going to those collection plates. Actually, religion overall is in decline. All the various denominations are seeing a lower attendance. We're even seeing it over at Claire's church. People are turning away from religion because they're looking at the world as it is right now and saying, if this is supposed to be the will of God, then, this isn't working out for us. Or maybe God went on vacation. Maybe he's not taking phone calls anymore from the priests. But this is not the quality work we expect on the resume of a supreme being. All right, let's talk a little bit about human-caused global warming because it is still out there. There was a new Arctic blast coming down from Canada into the central states here. Ski Valley is open again after receiving 42 inches of snow. And it wasn't that they needed the snow. It just took a long time to get the road back open. And that was the big complaint. There's all that snow up there, and the skiers and snowboarders, they waited all weekend to try and get in there. And it just took a very long time to get through all that snow. Ski Valley on Mount Lemmon is back open. They got 3.5 feet of snow. And NASA is now reporting that the Earth is greener now than 20 years ago. Now, NASA is saying it is thanks to the reforestation efforts of countries and communities in India and China, and it may partly be. But don't forget, CO2 levels have increased slightly, and the more carbon dioxide there is in the atmosphere, the taller, faster, and greener plants will grow. So NASA may be looking at the fact that CO2 is being absorbed out of the atmosphere by the plants. The EPA calls carbon dioxide a toxic pollutant. It isn't that. It's plant food. Without carbon dioxide, there's no plant life. With plant life. Without plant life, there's no animal life. It's that simple. This global warming was a hoax. And tomorrow, of course, is the 1st of March. And as the old saying goes, March comes in like a lion, goes out like a lamb. And hopefully for the people who've had to deal with this harsh winter, I hope that's true this year. But I have a hunch we may see the snow linger a little bit longer. And because there is so much of it, when the spring thaw finally gets here, we're going to have some serious flooding. So those of you living in flood zones, make the appropriate preparations right now. And behind it all, the global warming people are out there saying, see, it's global warming. It proves global warming. And that fusing ball of hydrogen up in the sky's got absolutely nothing to do with it. It's all your fault. So give us your money and your obedience. All right, we're going to take another break here for commercials. We'll be back after these few words.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Corporate media dominates the American opinion. Finding independent voices that counter this avalanche is becoming increasingly difficult. With the endless corruption running rampant throughout our government, independent voices are needed more than ever to battle the offensive against our freedoms and liberties. As a listener of RBN, no one understands this concept better than you. Now it's up to you to do your part. The time has come for you to take action and begin broadcasting the truth to hundreds or thousands of people every month. Sound impossible? Quite the contrary. With pointed slogans from LibertyStickers.com, you can reach countless sleeping Americans unaware that they live in a real-life wonderland. LibertyStickers.com has a huge inventory of political bumper stickers and messages that reflect the truth about our government, our politicians, and the future of America. With so many in stock, there's one perfect for you. Visit us today at LibertyStickers.com. Again, that's LibertyStickers.com. Do your part. Your voice is important. Let it be heard.
February is Heart Month. Every year for the month of February, to show our appreciation to Extendivite's faithful customers, we have a sale. If you would like to try Extendivite, now is the time to get a few months ahead and really give Extendivite the time to show you how it works. Most of Extendivite's long-term customers wait for this sale to stock up. People and doctors tell us about the unbelievable improvements that they have experienced in their overall health, not just the heart. Extendivite wants you to experience the power of these herbs. Get a 4-month supply for only $115 for either the capsules or tincture. Please take advantage of this once per year sale and get healthy for life. To order, call 1-877-928-8822 or visit heartdrop.com or find us on Amazon.
Extend your life with Extendovite.
Tired of being lied to by mass media? It's growing more and more apparent today that news is received less and less through standard media outlets. Even with a growing audience every day, RBN is beginning to direct more efforts into social media. Social media and the use of the internet is fast becoming the primary source of people for news, regardless of demographic. RBN has set out to provide some of the best news on the internet through republicbroadcasting.org and also has begun to use the tools to our advantage by way of social media. Republic Broadcasting is now operating a Facebook page to function as yet another avenue to have our collective voice reach new audiences across not only America, but across the globe as well. The Facebook page features not only news, but also an RBN player to listen to our broadcasts. Get involved by visiting facebook.com/Republic Broadcasting and liking our page and share it with your friends and family, because you can handle the truth.
When all this twisted steel was swept away, did these remaining holes reveal what really happened? What really happened?
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And getting on back to science and pardon me, health issues. This story illustrates something that I think probably most of us weren't thinking about. Back in 2017, a 69-year-old man had pancreatic cancer. He was treated with nuclear medicine, a radioactive injection, and sadly died 3 days later. So far, so good. He was sent to be cremated. And now research is suggesting that this may have in fact spread radioactivity around the crematorium, around the funeral home. And I think it's something that hardly anybody has really thought about up until now, because the manufacture and administration of these radioactive drugs is tightly controlled and monitored. But apparently what happens after the treatment is a completely different story. And right now, more than half of deceased Americans are cremated at present. And you have to start thinking, with all the stuff that's been pumped into them, what kind of toxic pollution is the result there? That could be a serious matter. Now, maybe I'm a little hyper right now about radioactivity because we got to go through Fukushima. And with all this talk about a possible nuclear exchange between India and Pakistan, my radiation nudgies, if you will, are in high dudgeon. And yeah, I mean, it's a serious situation out there. Over in Los Angeles, there's a countywide outbreak of whooping cough. It hits exclusive Harvard Westlake hard. And of about 1,600 students who attend Harvard Westlake, where tuition is close to $40,000 a year, only 18 opted out of vaccinations for whooping cough for medical reasons. The rest were vaccinated. None of the 30 students who contracted whooping cough were not vaccinated. Let me rephrase that. Every one of the students who came down with whooping cough had had the vaccine for whooping cough. And so why is there a sudden outbreak? Is it because of the vaccine? Story out of Waking Times. And apparently government research has confirmed measles outbreaks are transmitted by the vaccinated, because the vaccine consists of an attenuated pathogen, and it's injected into you, and you literally start sweating these pathogens through your skin, exposing people around you. It's a very, very reckless thing here. Up in Ontario, over 6,000 students will be suspended from school because they are not vaccinated. And these suspensions will be handed out to students in the Waterloo area of Ontario. So once again, Canada's gone down the same path as the United States. We don't care if the stuff is effective. We don't care if it's even harmful. It's making money for our good friends in the pharmaceutical industry, and you will get your shots. It's a totally corrupt system. Totally corrupt system. So let's have some good news here. Over at SpaceX, boy, if I were young, that would be a company I would love to go to work for. SpaceX, when they launched their first Crew Dragon capsule, which is this coming Saturday for a test. They're going to launch it to the International Space Station. It will be carrying a passenger of sorts. There will be a dummy on board wearing the company's black and white spacesuit, which has sort of become a visual trademark. It's the same spacesuit that graces Starman, who's the mannequin driver of the red Tesla Roadster that SpaceX launched into orbit around the sun last year on the maiden flight of the Falcon Heavy rocket. Now, given that the Tesla Roadster isn't really made to be out in outer space, experts are saying that probably the space environment has, shall we say, reduced its resale value. But I love the sense of humor. I love the sense of humor. And I love the fact that SpaceX is getting out there. I think it's great. I think the United States was away from space for too long. NASA got hamstrung. They got basically co-opted into rubber stamping human-caused global warming, and they forgot their original mission. And of course, NASA's now getting out there as well. But yeah, we're spacefaring people now. Let's start acting like it. Over at NASA, they've done some interesting experiments where they filled a beaker with a mix similar to what was found in the ancient ocean on Earth, including water, minerals, ammonia, and pyruvate. And that's a mineral which is located near the hydrothermal vents. The mixture was heated to 70 degrees Celsius. Most oxygen was removed from the mix, and iron hydroxide, or green rust, which was abundant in ancient times, was added. The green rust reacted with what little oxygen remained in the mixture, producing the amino acid alanine and the alpha hydroxy acid lactate. These are some of the basic organic materials that some researchers believe can further combine into more complex molecules, eventually leading to a self-replicating molecule, meaning life. Now, this is not the first time such experiments have conducted, nor is it the first time such experiments have produced amino acids. I remember there was one that was done at one of the universities in New York. Same thing, water, ammonia, CO2, bunch of the primordial gases was put into a beaker. It was subjected to electric sparking to simulate activation by lightning. And after a while, there was this brown sludge that formed all over the inside of the beaker, which turned out to be loaded with all of these amino acids and building blocks. This is how it all came to be. And as far as the green rust, yeah, it's actually true. Most people don't understand this. They think of Earth's oceans as always having been blue. No, in primordial times, the Earth's oceans were green. And in the process of life forming and evolving in the ocean, the green went away and was replaced by the blue. See, the whole system evolves together. It's not static. The environment evolves with us. In fact, if we were transported to the Earth as it was when life first arose, we would all die. It would be lethal. So the environment and the life forms evolve together, constantly adapting to each other. That's how the system works. Okay. Now, in a study published in Science on the 22nd, a consortium of researchers led by Stephen Benner, founder of the Foundation for Applied Molecular Evolution in Alachua, Florida, basically came out showing an experiment where they created a synthetic 8-letter genetic language that is able to store and transcribe information like natural DNA, which only has the 4 letters, which stand for guanine, cytosine, adenine, and thymine, G, C, A, and T. These scientists added an additional 4 chemicals to the latter. So that's going to be very, very interesting. Okay, and once again, proving that I was a little ahead of the time, Dr. Amanda Hendricks, co-lead of the NASA Roadmaps to Oceans World Group, in an interview in the Daily Express, basically said that there might be some kind of what she called crazy form of methane-based life on Titan. And she's convinced that alien life could be found on Saturn's moon because it has both an ocean at the subsurface and it has liquid hydrocarbon lakes on the surface. And it's absolutely right. And she's saying there would not be aliens with green heads swimming around in there, but there could be simple life forms. And she's absolutely right. We have to avoid being species-centric or chauvinistic in our thinking. We hear scientists saying, well, we're looking for life in outer space. What they usually mean subconsciously, they're looking for life like us. Carbon-based, DNA. And I think that's narrowing the scope. I think anywhere that you have a liquid mixing medium saturated with the indigenous minerals and an energy source to drive it all, sooner or later you're going to form more and more complex molecules until one begins to self-replicate. And that's the start of life, that self-replicating molecule that is able to basically take in more molecules around it and form duplicates of itself. That's where it all begins, probably a very simple sugar. And from then on, mutation, it starts to evolve and evolve. And it will evolve very slowly, like it did here on Earth in the Precambrian period, until all of a sudden sex came along and evolution accelerated with the sharing of genetic information. Okay, I'm already getting nasty grams from people who don't believe in evolution. Where is your proof? You were not there and neither was anybody else. I can show you mine. It's the King James Bible. Okay, so what you're telling me basically is a bunch of Bronze Age goat herders had the inside track, and all of modern physicists, chemists, paleontologists, and astronomers are flat out wrong. That's what you're trying to say here. And by the way, there is an evidentiary trail. It's called the fossil record. Now, getting on back here, this is another interesting story, and these kind of things pop up every once in a while. There was this gentleman living in Indiana, Don Miller. He was aged 90, and he died back in 2015. And apparently he'd been an engineer during World War II, and then after that he did missionary work around the world. And apparently on examining his home, apparently it's gone through probate now, they discovered human bones belonging to 500 Native Americans, along with a treasure trove of 40,000 priceless artifacts from around the world. I am hoping that the U.S. government will have the decency to simply repatriate all these artifacts where they need to go. And, you know, it's kind of an interesting problem to consider because, you know, I grew up in an age where people collected things, you know, where we looked at the British Museum and said, oh, look at everything they've collected from around the world. These days, it's looked at as, you know, you stole all that stuff from its rightful owner. Now, when I was a collector, I collected things nobody was going to miss, like seashells, rocks, butterflies, things like that. But you need to be careful. And I got into a debate one time because when Claire and I were still living in Southern California, we went out to a place called Steamwells, where there had been some Native American artwork on the rocks, and it had just been torn up, sawn off, sliced off to be sold in art galleries, and it was a real tragedy. And driving out, I spotted a chunk of rock in the roadway that had a dash of paint on it. And I picked it up and I took it with me. And I shared that information with some other friends, and I had some archaeologists come down on me saying, you should have left it. You took it out of its context. And I said, well, it was already out of its context, and lying in the road, it was only a matter of time before it would have been run over and crushed. But you do need to be careful. If you're looking at something in its original context, meaning where it fell, where it died, you should leave it there. Once it's out of its context, it may have collectible value out there on eBay, but its scientific value is pretty much gone. That reminds me of that embarrassment. Probably a lot of you haven't heard this story. Did you know at one point some of the Apollo moon rocks actually got stolen from down in Houston? And it was an incredible breach of security where these people, just on a lark, it wasn't even like this big super crime with a lot of planning and everything. They just figured out how to get into the building, and they grabbed a filing cabinet that had some of the lunar samples, and they just wheeled it on out. And this guy and his girlfriend threw some of them on the bed so that they could make love on the moon, which of course destroyed the scientific value of the rocks for pretty much anything involving the surface. I imagine there's some chemical tests they can still do, but that was pretty tacky for them to do. All right, out in California, they're obviously flooding, wildfires, earthquakes, but volcanologists are saying that California is ignoring the risk by its 7 active volcanoes. And they're saying that there should be more attention paid to them because they are a threat, because they are active. They're not even classed as dormant. And California has spent decades preparing the public for the known disasters, quakes, floods, wildfires. But according to this new report from the U.S. Geological Survey, volcanic eruptions are about as common in California as the largest earthquakes along the San Andreas Fault. They just receive far less attention. But experts are warning that the 7 active volcanoes positioned throughout the state, including Mount Shasta and Salton Buttes, have potential to affect hundreds of thousands of people in the event of an eruption. Now, I remember one time when I was driving from California up to Washington State, and I was taking the inland road, and there's this one place, I wish I could remember where it was, where there's this overlook, where you could literally see all the volcanoes in the Cascades just in a row. And it was just an amazing, amazing view. Of course, if you want to see volcanoes here in Hawaii, you just look down because we're all standing on them. We all understand that pollution is a real problem. Apparently, researchers retrieving samples from the deepest part of the ocean, the Marianas Trench, although now they think there's another nearby trench that may be deeper, but I digress. They're examining the guts of the small organism of amphipods, and they're finding microplastics. Apparently, this pollution has just reached all the way down to the bottom of the ocean. And these trenches range in location from Japanese to Chilean waters. All of them are within what's called the Hadal Zone, meaning they're at least 6,000 meters under the sea. And they collected some of these samples from the Challenger Deep, and they found them with these microplastics. Okay, we're going to take a break for commercials. We'll be back with the last segment of our program after these few words.
Homeowners, if your lender has gone out of business or sold your transaction to another lender or servicer, you may be the victim of a wrongful foreclosure, resulting in the loss of your home. If you've already lost your home, are in foreclosure, or even in good standing, you can challenge the mortgage transaction's illegal issue, and your property can be restored to you, and your foreclosure can be stopped or reversed, and the mortgage transaction declared unenforceable. State laws, U.S. title codes, the Uniform Commercial Codes, and U.S. Supreme Court rulings have upheld that defective mortgage documentations can reverse or stop foreclosures and enforce property title claims in favor of the homeowner. We are having successes in stopping the process of foreclosure, the enforcement of the foreclosure judgments, the sale of property, and evictions after the sale. We are not attorneys, and we don't give legal advice. We are a professional team of legal researchers, providing forensic mortgage audits and expert witnesses. We have the knowledge to produce the evidence and enforce laws regarding your legal issues. We've been in business for 12 years without a complaint. Consultations are free, and we provide a free title search to confirm if your mortgage has legal defects. Please call 855-253-3748. 855, 2, keep it today.
Without the right accessories, any guy can be off the mark. Whether you've invested thousands in your arsenal or you own a single trusted firearm, a visit to AROutfitting.com is in order. It's one of the finest online selections of tactical optics and AR parts and add-ons, like EOTech, quick target acquisition with no peripheral loss. Browse the full range of Nikon scopes and binoculars. AROutfitting.com can illuminate your world with Streamlight gun-mounted lights from keychain to large handhelds, up to 1,100 lumens. Find some stability with Battenfield tactical bipods. AirOutfitting.com has CMMG gun parts, barrels, assemblies, handguards, part kits, and more, plus mag-full clips and magazines. I know I've got you excited, so take a breath. Head to AirOutfitting.com. The site's super easy to navigate and features a ton of technical info, including links to manuals. We also welcome vendor and manufacturer inquiries. Remember, if you don't see it, we can get it at AROutfitting.com.
Did you know that neither the American Medical Association nor the American Bar Association were established to benefit the American people? Have you recognized that in our country, healthcare has little to do with health, and that our court system has nothing to do with justice? The priests of both medicine and law have been incentivized to implement a dark agenda on behalf of the Bilderbergers and their ilk. To protect ourselves and our progeny, we need to take a much closer look at how these two giant industries really work. Join me, Al Whitney, on In Defense of Humanity, Saturdays at 7 p.m. Central, as we expose the matrix and learn how not to consent to our own destruction.
We will not go down in the night without a fight. You can burn up our mosques and our homes and our schools, but our spirit will never die. We will not go down in Gaza tonight.
And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show and last segment of our program today on this Thursday. And turning back over to Monsanto, they may be in trouble. And we're not just talking about the lawsuits, and which are massive. Last year, Monsanto lost a lawsuit for $289 million after a man came forward claiming Roundup, which contains glyphosate, caused his non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And even though the fine has been dropped to $78 million, it was a massive failure on the part of Monsanto in terms of its public image. And now thousands of other lawsuits are lined up, ready to go. You've got the World Health Organization saying that glyphosate is a probable human carcinogen. And with all that money on the line, there's going to be somebody who's going to be funding some serious research and making it available to these attorneys. Because when there's the possibility of a massive court settlement like that, yeah, that's going to drive a lot of science that Monsanto cannot control. But the other issue is that Monsanto, even though it was involved in things like Agent Orange and some really nasty stuff through the years, it has worked very hard to present this very positive image of its company to the world. And that may now be sliding between the glyphosate issue and GMO. Public demand is making it in the best interest of companies to label their products as not containing GMO. Monsanto is still trying to push for a law that would make it illegal for labels to say whether GMO was used or not. I guess their justification is restraint of trade. But more and more companies just don't want to be associated with Monsanto due to public awareness. The brand is damaged. This is the market reacting. And if the market is allowed to work freely without government intervention, Monsanto may be headed down. Okay, David Dubine, who's the creator of the Adapt 2030 channel on YouTube, and he's out there talking about what kind of changes we can see on Earth as the grand solar minimum intensifies. Because obviously it's going to affect crop production, the economy, and everybody on our planet, especially in the northern latitudes. It's going to affect where the jet streams are. We're going to see more and more record cold and snow. And it's time to quit this nonsense about human-caused global warming and face up to the reality they guessed wrong. And it's time to look at the real science and the real facts and say there are going to be consequences. It's not just going to be good for business up at the ski resorts. There are going to be some serious society-changing situations that we need to look at as the world gets colder and colder. Again, maybe good to study the Little Ice Age. May not be entirely negative. We may have an ice fair on the Potomac. Anyway, there's the music. Time for me to get on out of here and get something useful done with the rest of the day. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Take what you learn here, share it with everybody that you know. Use email, face-to-face, bring back the art of the conversation. Stay off of Twitter and Facebook and Google. They're just filtering everything left and right. Not just conservatism, but anything questioning vaccines. Next, it'll be GMO. Please donate to RBN. Donate to whatreallyhappened.com. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.